It was a warm Friday afternoon when 16-year-old Zoe Richards stepped into Luxe Boutique with her two friends, Madison and Taylor. The high-end store sat in the affluent part of town, its windows displaying expensive clothes and jewelry that caught the sunlight. Zoe had just finished debate team practice, where she had won the mock trial competition for the third time this semester. "I need to find something nice for my mom's birthday," Zoe told her friends as they entered the cool, perfumed air of the store. She's been working so hard on this big case. What Zoe didn't mention was how proud she was of her mother. Judge Elaine Richards was one of the few black women on the federal bench in their state, known for her fair rulings and sharp legal mind. Zoe had grown up watching her mother break barriers while still making it home for dinner most nights. As the girls browsed through the store, Zoe noticed a security guard following her. At first, she thought it might be her imagination, but when she moved to a different section, he followed. When she picked up a silk scarf to examine it, his eyes narrowed. Meanwhile, Madison and Taylor, both white, freely tried on jewelry and handled expensive items without any attention from security. "Is it just me, or is that guy watching me?" Zoe whispered to Madison. Madison glanced over and frowned. "Yeah, he definitely is. That's so messed up." Zoe sighed. This wasn't the first time. Last month at the mall, a store employee had asked to check her bag while ignoring her white friends. The month before, a woman had clutched her purse tighter when Zoe sat next to her on the bus. "Just ignore him," Taylor said. "Let's look at the jewelry." The jewelry counter sparkled under bright lights. Glass cases held necklaces, bracelets, and rings that cost more than most people made in a month. Zoe spotted a delicate silver necklace with a small sapphire pendant, her mother's birthstone. "Can I see that one?" she asked the clerk, pointing to the necklace. The clerk hesitated, glancing at the security guard before reluctantly taking out the necklace. Zoe held it carefully, admiring how the blue stone caught the light. "This is perfect," she said. "I'll take it." When she handed over her credit card, the one her parents had given her for emergencies and special occasions, the clerk examined it closely, even holding it up to the light. "It's real," Zoe said quietly. After paying, Zoe carefully put the small bag with the wrapped gift into her backpack. The three girls continued shopping for another 20 minutes, with Madison and Taylor buying small items for themselves. "Want to grab smoothies?" Taylor suggested as they headed toward the exit. "Sounds good," Zoe agreed, feeling relieved to leave the uncomfortable atmosphere of the store. As they pushed through the glass doors into the sunlight, Zoe felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had gotten the perfect gift for her mom despite the unpleasant experience. Judge Richards always told her that success was the best response to prejudice. The girls chatted about their weekend plans as they walked down the sidewalk, unaware that the store manager was making a phone call behind them, unaware that the security guard was pointing at Zoe's back as he spoke to someone on his radio, unaware that two police officers were already turning their patrol car around at the corner. Zoe laughed at something Taylor said, feeling good about the gift she'd purchased and looking forward to her smoothie, not knowing that in just 5 minutes, her life would change forever. Zoe, Madison, and Taylor had just reached the corner when two police officers stepped out of their patrol car, blocking their path. Officer Daniels, a tall man with a crew cut, and Officer Reynolds, shorter with a thick mustache, approached with stern faces. "Excuse me, miss," Officer Daniels said, looking directly at Zoe while ignoring her friends. "We need to speak with you." Zoe felt her stomach drop. "Is something wrong, officer?" "We received a call from Luxe Boutique. They reported a theft," Officer Reynolds said, his hand resting on his belt near his handcuffs. "A diamond necklace is missing." Madison stepped forward. "That's impossible. We were all together the whole time." Officer Daniels held up his hand to silence Madison. "Young lady, I'm not talking to you." "But we didn't steal anything," Zoe said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I bought a sapphire necklace for my mom. I have the receipt in my bag." "We'll need to check your backpack," Officer Reynolds said. People on the sidewalk slowed down to watch. Some took out their phones. Zoe felt her cheeks grow hot with embarrassment, but she remembered her mother's advice: stay calm, be respectful, but know your rights. "I paid for everything I have," Zoe said. "But yes, you can look in my bag." She carefully removed her backpack and unzipped it. Officer Daniels snatched it from her hands and began roughly digging through it, pulling out her textbooks, wallet, and the small shopping bag from the boutique. "What's this?" he asked, holding up the bag with the sapphire necklace. "That's what I bought. The receipt is in there," Zoe explained. Officer Reynolds reached into his pocket and pulled out a photo. "The missing item is a diamond pendant necklace worth over $2,000. He showed the picture to his partner, but not to Zoe. "That's not what I bought," Zoe insisted. "Mine is a sapphire." Officer Daniels opened the small box, glanced at the necklace, then showed something to his partner. They exchanged a look. "This matches the description," Officer Reynolds said. "Turn around, miss." "What? No, that's not possible," Zoe protested. "Check the receipt." Madison had already started recording with her phone. "You can't do this. We were together the whole time." Taylor pulled out her phone too. "I'm calling my dad. He's a lawyer." Officer Daniels ignored them and grabbed Zoe's arm, spinning her around. Before she could say another word, she felt the cold metal of handcuffs closing around her wrists. "Zoe Richards, you're under arrest for grand theft," Officer Daniels announced loudly. A small crowd had gathered now. Some people whispered to each other. Others recorded with their phones. Zoe caught fragments of their comments. "Another shoplifter. These kids these days. Not surprised." Tears burned in Zoe's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. This couldn't be happening. She was as straight a student. She had never even had detention. "Call my mom," she called to her friends as the officers led her toward the patrol car. "Don't worry, Zoe. We'll get help," Madison shouted back, her voice breaking. As Officer Reynolds pushed Zoe's head down to place her in the back of the patrol car, she saw the store security guard standing at the boutique entrance, arms crossed, watching with satisfaction. The car door slammed shut. Through the window, Zoe watched her friends frantically making phone calls. Madison was crying now, still recording everything. Taylor was shouting something Zoe couldn't hear. The patrol car pulled away from the curb. Zoe sat in shocked silence, the handcuffs digging into her wrists. She thought of her mother in her black judge's robe, commanding respect in her courtroom. How could this be happening to Judge Richards' daughter? But as the patrol car turned the corner, Zoe realized a terrible truth. To these officers, she wasn't Judge Richards' daughter. She was just another black teenager they assumed was guilty. The police station buzzed with activity as Officer Daniels led Zoe through the main doors. The bright fluorescent lights made the teenage girl squint after the dimness of the patrol car. Her wrists hurt from the tight handcuffs, but she kept her head high, remembering her mother's words. "Never let them see your fear." Officer Reynolds walked ahead, carrying Zoe's backpack. At the processing desk, a middle-aged woman with graying hair barely looked up from her computer. "Shoplifting at Luxe Boutique," Officer Daniels announced. "Diamond necklace." "I didn't steal anything," Zoe said firmly. "I bought a sapphire necklace for my mom's birthday. The receipt is in the bag." The desk officer glanced at her briefly. "Save it for the detective, honey." They took her fingerprints, pressing each finger against a digital scanner. Then they made her stand against a wall for a mugshot, the camera flash momentarily blinding her. Zoe felt tears threatening again but blinked them away. "I want to call my parents," Zoe said. "I have the right to make a phone call." Officer Daniels smirked. "You watch too many TV shows, kid. You'll get your call when we're done processing you." They led her to a small room with a metal table and 3 chairs. The walls were bare except for a large mirror that Zoe knew was likely a window for others to observe. Her mother had explained how interrogation rooms worked during one of their dinner conversations about the justice system. Officer Reynolds finally removed the handcuffs. Zoe rubbed her wrists, noticing the red marks where the metal had dug into her skin. "Sit down," Officer Daniels ordered, pointing to a chair. Zoe sat quietly, trying to control her breathing. Panic wouldn't help her now. She needed to think clearly. "So, Zoe," Officer Reynolds began, his voice suddenly friendly as he sat across from her. "Why don't you make this easy on yourself and tell us what happened?" "I already told you what happened," Zoe replied. "I bought a necklace for my mom. I paid for it. I have a receipt." Officer Daniels slapped a folder on the table. "The store says a diamond necklace is missing. It was in the case right next to the sapphire one. The manager saw you hanging around that area." "I was looking at the sapphire necklace because blue is my mom's favorite color," Zoe explained. I never touched any diamond necklace. Wherever you live, Zoe? Officer Reynolds asked, changing tactics. Oakwood Heights, she answered. The officers exchanged glances. Oakwood Heights was one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the city. Right, Officer Daniels said sarcastically, and I live in a mansion on the moon. Where do you really live? I told you where I live, Zoe insisted. My mother is. Let me guess, Officer Daniels interrupted. Your mother is a famous actress. Your father owns a record label? Kids like you always have big stories. What do you mean, kids like me? Sue asked, her voice steady despite her anger. Officer Reynolds leaned forward. Look, we know how this works. You and your friends go into nice stores. One creates a distraction while the other takes something. It's a common technique. That's not what happened, Zoe said firmly. Check the security cameras. They'll show I didn't take anything. The manager already confirmed it was you, Officer Daniels said. Just admit it, and maybe the judge will go easy on you. First offense and all that. Zoe almost laughed at the irony. If only they knew about the judge and her family. I want to call my parents now, Zoe repeated. And I want a lawyer. Lawyer? Officer Reynolds chuckled. Public defenders don't show up for shoplifting cases, sweetheart. 3 hours had passed. They had left her alone in the room twice, hoping she would get nervous and confess. But Zoe remained calm, even as hunger and thirst made her uncomfortable. She knew their tactics. She had heard her mother talk about police interrogation techniques at dinner. When the door opened again, Officer Daniels held the phone. Fine. One call, he said, placing it on the table. Make it quick. Zoe's fingers trembled slightly as she dialed home, praying her mother would answer. The phone rang 3 times before someone picked up. Zoe nearly cried with relief when she heard her mother's voice. Hello. Mom, it's me, Zoe said, trying to keep her voice steady. I'm at the police station downtown. They think I stole something, but I didn't. There was a brief silence on the other end. When Judge Elaine Richards spoke again, her voice was calm but cold as ice. Are you hurt? No, but they handcuffed me and took my fingerprints and… Don't say anything else, her mother interrupted. Don't answer any more questions. I'm on my way. Officer Daniels reached for the phone. Time's up. Mom, they're taking the phone. Put an officer on, Judge Richards demanded, her voice loud enough that Officer Daniels could hear it. He hesitated, then took the phone. This is Officer Daniels. Zoe couldn't hear what her mother said, but Officer Daniels' face changed. His confident smirk disappeared. He stood straighter, like a soldier called to attention. Yes, ma'am, he said. No, ma'am. I understand. Yes, ma'am, she's being held for. He paused, listening. Yes, ma'am. Right away, ma'am. When he hung up, Officer Daniels looked at Zoe with new eyes. He turned to Officer Reynolds and whispered something. Officer Reynolds' eyes widened. What's your full name? Officer Reynolds asked Zoe, his tone suddenly respectful. Zoe Elaine Richards, she answered. And your address? 435 Maple Avenue, Oakwood Heights. The officers exchanged nervous glances. Officer Daniels cleared his throat. Would you like some water, Miss Richards? Zoe nodded, watching their behavior change with grim satisfaction. 20 minutes ago, they had acted like she was a criminal. Now they treated her like she might break. Officer Reynolds returned with a bottle of water and a granola bar. Your mother is on her way, he said. She should be here soon. Zoe took small sips of water, watching the clock on the wall. The officers left her alone in the room, but this time the door remained open. Through it, she could hear hurried conversations and phones ringing. Exactly 23 minutes later, the station's atmosphere changed. Voices quieted. Footsteps hurried across tiled floors. Zoe heard her mother's voice, clear and authoritative, before she appeared in the doorway. Judge Elaine Richards stood tall in her charcoal suit, her natural hair pulled back in a neat bun. Gold reading glasses hung from a chain around her neck. She carried a leather briefcase that Zoe knew contained legal pads and reference books. Behind her stood the police chief, his face pale and serious. Mom, Zoe said, rising from her chair. Judge Richards crossed the room in 3 quick steps and embraced her daughter. Though her face remained composed, her arms trembled slightly as they held Zoe. "Are you all right?" she whispered. "I'm okay," Zoe assured her. Judge Richards turned to face the police chief. "I want to see the security footage from the store. I want to speak to the store manager. And I want the officers who arrested my daughter in this room right now." "Judge Richards, I assure you we're looking into this matter with the utmost." "Chief Hansen," she interrupted, "my 16-year-old daughter was handcuffed on a public street, fingerprinted, photographed, and held for 3 hours without access to counsel or her parents. This is not a matter to be looked into. This is a matter to be resolved. Now." The chief nodded quickly. "Yes, Your Honor." Officer Daniels and Officer Reynolds appeared in the doorway, standing stiffly at attention. When they saw Judge Richards, their faces drained of color. "Officers," Judge Richards said coolly, "perhaps you'd like to explain why you arrested the daughter of a federal judge without probable cause." "Your Honor," Officer Daniels began, "we received a call about a stolen necklace." "And did you check the receipt for the necklace my daughter actually purchased?" Judge Richards asked. "Well, no, we." "Did you review the security footage before making an arrest?" The store manager identified. "That wasn't my question, Officer Daniels," Judge Richards said. "Did you review the footage? Yes or no?" "No, Your Honor." Judge Richards nodded. "I see. Well, we'll review it now. Chief Hansen, shall we?" The chief quickly agreed. As they prepared to leave the room, Judge Richards put her arm around Zoe's shoulders. "Let's get this sorted out," she said. "And then we're going home." The conference room of the police station fell silent as the security footage played on a large screen. Judge Richards sat straight-backed in her chair, her expression unreadable as she watched her daughter shop in the boutique. Zoe sat beside her mother, hands folded in her lap. Across the table, Chief Hansen, Officer Daniels, and Officer Reynolds watched with growing discomfort. On screen, Zoe could be seen examining the sapphire necklace, handing her credit card to the clerk, and placing her purchase in her backpack. At no point did she touch, open, or even approach the display case that held the diamond necklace. "Pause it there," Judge Richards commanded when the footage showed Zoe and her friends leaving the store. The chief hit the pause button. "Mr. Peterson," Judge Richards said, turning to face the nervous manager, "would you please point out where my daughter takes the diamond necklace?" The manager's face flushed red. "Well, Your Honor, it's not visible on camera, but the diamonds were missing after she left. The security guard saw her lingering near that case." "I see," Judge Richards said, her voice dangerously calm. "So you didn't actually see her take anything. You simply assumed the black girl must be the thief." Mr. Peterson's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "No, that's not." Judge Richards turned back to the screen. "Chief, please continue the footage. I'd like to see what happens after my daughter leaves." The chief pressed play. The footage showed the store after Zoe and her friends had gone. A female employee approached the jewelry counter and spoke to the clerk. They both looked concerned. The clerk opened a drawer beneath the counter and pulled out a velvet tray. The chief increased the volume. "I found it," the female employee exclaimed on the recording. "The diamond necklace got moved to the back when I was cleaning the display this morning." The clerk looked relieved. "Thank goodness. I was worried someone had stolen it." The store manager stepped forward. "Wait, that can't be right," the security guard said. "Chief, stop the video," Judge Richards said. The screen froze. She turned to Mr. Peterson, her eyes narrowed. "Would you care to explain why you reported a theft after your staff found the necklace?" Mr. Peterson's face had gone from red to ghostly white. I wasn't informed. The security guard called the police, and I assumed." "You assumed," Judge Richards repeated. "You assumed my daughter was guilty. You assumed she was a thief. And instead of checking the facts, you let the police take a 16-year-old girl away in handcuffs." The room fell silent again. Officer Daniels shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Officer Reynolds stared at his hands. "Chief Hansen," Judge Richards continued, "I would like to see the body camera footage from the officers." The chief hesitated. "Judge Richards, I'm not sure that's necessary." "I think it's very necessary," she insisted. "As a federal judge, I'm well aware of proper police procedure." As a mother, I want to see exactly how these officers treated my daughter. Chief Hansen nodded reluctantly. I'll have it pulled up right away. While they waited, Zoe noticed Officer Daniels whispering urgently to Officer Reynolds. Both men looked worried. The store manager had backed up against the wall, as if trying to disappear. The body camera footage began to play. Zoe winced as she watched herself being handcuffed on the street. Her mother's hand found hers under the table and squeezed it gently. When the officer's dismissive comments about kids like her played through the speakers, Judge Richards' grip tightened. When Officer Daniels referred to Oakwood Heights as where all the rich people pretend to live, Chief Hansen closed his eyes in dismay. By the time the footage showed them ignoring Zoe's requests to call her parents, Judge Richards had heard enough. Turn it off, she said quietly. The screen went black. Judge Richards stood up, gathering her briefcase. Chief Hansen, I'll expect a formal apology to my daughter, in writing, by tomorrow morning. I'll also expect those officers to be placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. The chief nodded quickly. Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Peterson, she continued, turning to the manager, I suggest you return to your store and sort out your inventory systems, and perhaps reconsider who you hire as security. The manager nodded frantically. Yes, Judge Richards. I'm so sorry about all this. The store would like to offer your daughter. My daughter doesn't need anything from your store, Judge Richards interrupted. What she needed was to be treated with basic human dignity. She turned to Zoe. Let's go home, sweetheart. As they walked out of the conference room, Zoe heard Chief Hansen begin to reprimand the officers behind them. For the first time since this nightmare began, she felt a small sense of justice. The sun was setting when Judge Richards' black Audi pulled into their driveway. Zoe stared out the window, watching the familiar outline of their two-story colonial home come into view. She had never been so happy to see home. Your father is waiting inside, Judge Richards said softly as she turned off the engine. He wanted to come to the station, but I told him to stay here. I was afraid he might lose his temper. Zoe nodded. Her father, Dr. Marcus Richards, was usually the calmest person in the family, but when it came to protecting his daughter, his patience had limits. As they walked to the front door, Zoe noticed several missed calls and text messages on her phone, which the police had finally returned along with her other belongings. Madison and Taylor had sent dozens of worried messages. News about her arrest had already spread through their school's social media. The front door opened before they reached it. Dr. Richards rushed out and wrapped Zoe in a tight hug. My baby girl, he whispered, his voice shaking. Are you okay? I'm fine, Dad, Zoe said, though tears finally began to fall now that she was safely home. Inside, Zoe's father had prepared her favorite comfort food, mac and cheese with extra cheese, just the way she liked it. As they sat around the kitchen table, Zoe recounted the whole experience. Her father's expression darkened with each detail. This isn't right, Dr. Richards said, his hand gripping his fork tightly. They can't just get away with this. They won't, Judge Richards assured him. I'm meeting with our attorney tomorrow morning. This isn't just about Zoe. This kind of racial profiling happens every day to kids who don't have parents with resources and connections. Zoe's phone buzzed continuously with notifications. Her friends had started a hashtag. #JusticeForZoe. Someone had posted a video of her arrest, which was quickly gathering views. The news called, Dr. Richards said. 3 different stations. They want interviews. Judge Richards sighed. I expected that, but Zoe doesn't have to speak to anyone if she doesn't want to. Zoe pushed her mac and cheese around on her plate. What if I do want to? What if telling my story could help other kids? Her parents exchanged glances. That's your choice, her mother said carefully. But remember, once you put yourself out there, you can't take it back. The internet never forgets. I know, Zoe said, but I keep thinking about what would have happened if I wasn't your daughter. What if I was just a regular black girl whose parents couldn't make the police listen? What if I couldn't afford a lawyer? Judge Richards reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. That's exactly why I became a judge, Zoe, to try to make the system fairer. The doorbell rang, interrupting their conversation. Dr. Richards went to answer it. He returned moments later with a serious expression. It's Chief Hansen, he said. He wants to speak with you, Elaine. Judge Richards nodded. Show him in. Chief Hansen entered the kitchen, hat in hand. His eyes found Zoe, and he offered a respectful nod. Miss Richards, I want to personally apologize for what happened today, he said. It was unacceptable, and I take full responsibility as chief of police. Thank you, Zoe said quietly. He turned to Judge Richards. I placed Officers Daniels and Reynolds on immediate administrative leave. Internal Affairs will conduct a full investigation. And the store security guard? Judge Richards asked. He's been fired, Chief Hansen confirmed. The store owner called me personally to apologize. Judge Richards nodded. That's a start. But this isn't just about disciplining 2 officers, Chief. This is about systemic issues in your department. I understand, Your Honor, Chief Hansen said. That's why I'd like to invite you to help us review our training procedures. We need to do better. After the chief left, the family sat in silence for a moment. Zoe's phone continued to buzz with notifications. So, Dr. Richards asked gently, What do you want to do now, Zoe? Zoe took a deep breath. I want to tell my story, not just for me, but for everyone who's been profiled and didn't have a judge for a mom. Judge Richards squeezed her daughter's hand. Whatever you decide, we'll support you, and we'll make sure some good comes from this. For the first time that day, Zoe managed a small smile. She had been wronged, but she wasn't broken. And with her parents behind her, she would make her voice heard. 3 days after her arrest, Zoe sat nervously in the living room of her home. A camera crew from Channel 8 News had arranged chairs and lighting equipment around her. Her parents sat on either side, offering silent support. We're rolling in 3, 2, 1. The cameraman pointed to the reporter, a woman named Diana Wells who was known for her fair coverage of community issues. I'm here with Zoe Richards, the 16-year-old honor student who was wrongfully arrested last Friday, Diana began. Zoe, can you tell us what happened that day? Taking a deep breath, Zoe recounted her experience. As she spoke, her voice grew stronger. She described the security guard following her, the officers refusing to check her receipt, and the hours she spent in the interrogation room. They didn't believe me when I told them where I lived, Zoe explained. They assumed I was lying because... She paused. Because? Diana prompted gently. Because of how I look, Zoe finished. Because I'm black. The interview aired that evening. By morning, Zoe's story had gone viral. National news networks picked it up. Social media exploded with the hashtag #JusticeForZoe. People shared their own stories of being profiled in stores, pulled over for driving while black, or harassed for simply existing in spaces others thought they didn't belong. Zoe's phone rang constantly. Her school principal called to offer support. The debate team coach suggested she turn the experience into her next competition topic. Even the mayor called Judge Richards to express his concern about the incident. A week after the arrest, Zoe returned to school. She had worried about facing her classmates, but when she walked through the main doors, she was greeted with applause. Students she barely knew came up to thank her for speaking out. Several teachers told her they were proud of her courage. You're like famous now, Madison said during lunch. Have you seen how many followers you have? Zoe nodded. Her social media accounts had gained thousands of followers overnight. She had used the platform to share resources about racial profiling and criminal justice reform. I don't want to be famous, Zoe admitted. I just want things to change. That afternoon, Zoe was called to the principal's office. To her surprise, several students from the Black Student Union were waiting for her. We want you to speak at our next meeting, said Jamal, the club president. Your story is important, and people are listening to you. Zoe hesitated. I'm not sure what to say. Just tell your truth, Jamal encouraged. That's powerful enough. The following week, the school auditorium was packed for the Black Student Union meeting. Students, parents, teachers, and even some local politicians filled the seats. Zoe saw her parents sitting in the front row, their faces full of pride. As Zoe approached the podium, her heart raced. She had prepared notes, but now they seemed inadequate. Instead, she decided to speak from her heart. 2 weeks ago, I was just a regular student, she began. I had never been in trouble. I had plans for college and medical school. I thought if I worked hard and followed the rules, I would be treated fairly. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. But I learned that for some people, hard work and following rules isn't enough. Some people will always see your skin color first and your character second. What happened to me wasn't unique or special. It happens every day to people who look like me. The audience was silent, hanging on her every word. The only thing special about my case was that my mother is a federal judge who could make people listen. What about all the kids who don't have that advantage? Who speaks for them? Who ensures their rights are protected? Zoe looked at her parents, drawing strength from their encouraging smiles. That's why I'm speaking out, not just for myself, but for everyone who has been profiled, who has been assumed guilty because of their skin color. And I'm asking all of you to speak out too. When she finished speaking, the auditorium erupted in applause. People stood, cheering and wiping away tears. As Zoe returned to her seat, students reached out to touch her arm or squeeze her hand. Jamal hugged her as she sat down. "You just changed some lives today," he whispered. Zoe smiled, feeling a strange mix of sadness and hope. What had begun as the worst day of her life was becoming something powerful, a platform for change, a voice for those who often went unheard. For the first time since her arrest, Zoe felt truly free. 6 months had passed since that fateful day at Luxe Boutique. The maple trees outside Zoe's bedroom window had shed their summer green for golden autumn colors. Zoe sat at her desk, putting the final touches on her college application essay. Princeton was her dream school, and her essay about her experience with racial profiling had become a powerful statement about justice and resilience. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. She picked it up and read the headline. Police Reform Bill passes City Council. Attached was a photo of her mother standing next to the mayor as he signed the new legislation. Zoe smiled with pride. The Richards Reform Act, as people had started calling it, required all police officers in the city to undergo extensive bias training. It mandated body cameras to be on at all times during arrests. It created a civilian oversight board to review complaints against officers. And perhaps most importantly, it established new protocols for handling juvenile suspects. Downstairs, the doorbell rang. Zoe heard her father greeting someone, followed by footsteps on the stairs. A moment later, her bedroom door opened. "You have visitors," Dr. Richards announced. Madison and Taylor entered, both carrying gift bags and wearing broad smiles. "What's this?" Zoe asked, surprised. "It's a celebration," Madison explained, setting down her bag. "We saw the news about the bill passing." Taylor nodded enthusiastically. "Plus, we have news. The Youth Activism Award Committee called. You won." Zoe blushed. After her speech at the Black Student Union, she had started a student organization called Equal Justice Initiative. The group had grown to over 200 members across 5 local high schools. They'd organized workshops, collected stories of profiling, and attended city council meetings to advocate for change. "I couldn't have done any of this without you guys," Zoe said, hugging her friends. "Please," Madison laughed. "We just followed your lead." They moved to Zoe's bed, opening the gift bags to reveal celebration cupcakes and a framed photo of the 3 of them at their first protest march. "Oh, and guess what?" Taylor said. "I saw Officer Daniels yesterday." Zoe stiffened. Officer Daniels and Officer Reynolds had both been suspended for 3 months without pay. After their suspensions, they had been required to complete 200 hours of community service and undergo extensive retraining. "Where?" Zoe asked cautiously. "At the community center," Taylor explained. "He's volunteering with the after-school program, teaching kids basketball." Zoe raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Really?" "He looked different," Taylor continued. "Less intimidating, I guess. He was actually smiling and joking with the kids." Zoe wasn't sure how to feel about this information. She had spent months angry at those officers, replaying their cruel comments in her mind. But her mother had always taught her that true justice wasn't about punishment but about change. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was an email notification from Princeton. Her heart raced as she opened it. "They want to interview me," she exclaimed. "Princeton wants to interview me next week." Her friends squealed with excitement, wrapping her in a group hug. As they celebrated, Zoe thought about how much had changed since that day. The pain hadn't completely disappeared. Sometimes she still felt anxious when she saw police cars. Shopping in upscale stores still made her uncomfortable. But something else had grown alongside that pain, a sense of purpose. What happened to her had opened her eyes to injustice, but it had also shown her the power of her voice. Later that evening, after her friends had gone home, Zoe joined her parents on the back deck. The setting sun cast a warm glow over their garden. "I'm proud of you, Mom," Zoe said, looking at her mother. "The Reform Act is really going to help people." Judge Richards smiled. "I'm the one who's proud, Zoe. You took something terrible and turned it into something meaningful. That takes real courage." Dr. Richards put his arm around his daughter. "So, Princeton interviews next week. Are you nervous?" Zoe thought for a moment, watching the golden leaves swirl in the gentle breeze. "No," she said finally. "After everything that's happened, a college interview doesn't seem so scary." Her parents laughed, and Zoe joined them. She had learned that life could change in an instant, for worse, but also for better. She had been wrongly accused, but in fighting that injustice, she had found her voice, and she intended to keep using it. As darkness fell and stars appeared in the sky, Zoe Richards looked forward to her future, a future that once seemed prescribed, but now felt filled with purpose. She had discovered her power, not despite what happened to her, but because of it. And that, she realized, was the most important lesson of all.